Catskill, New York, 1983. Mike Tyson is 17 years old, living with Cus D'Amato, the legendary boxing trainer who took him in 2 years earlier, saved him from juvenile detention, gave him purpose, gave him discipline, gave him a future beyond the streets of Brownsville, Brooklyn, where Tyson grew up surrounded by violence, poverty, and no hope. Cus is transforming Tyson into a fighter, not just physically, mentally, teaching him the sweet science, the peekaboo style, how to slip punches, how to generate devastating power from compact movements, how to be first violent, then victorious. Tyson is already dangerous, already knocking out sparring partners, already showing the raw power that will make him the youngest heavyweight champion in history, but he's still learning, still developing, still 3 years away from turning professional. The gym in Catskill is old school, concrete floors, heavy bags hanging from chains, speed bags, a single boxing ring in the center. No modern equipment, no juice bar, no chrome machines, just the essentials, just what's needed to build fighters the traditional way, through repetition, discipline, pain, and constant work. Tyson trains there 6 days a week, morning and afternoon sessions, running at dawn, technique work, sparring, bag work, conditioning. Cus watches everything, corrects everything, pushes Tyson constantly, not with anger but with expectation, with the absolute belief that Tyson can be champion if he commits completely. One Saturday afternoon in late summer, a group of young men show up at the gym, 5 of them, early 20s, local guys, not fighters, just tough guys from town who heard about this kid from Brooklyn living with Cus, this kid who's supposed to be special. They want to see for themselves. Gyms like this are semi-public. Anyone can come watch, can pay a small fee to train if they want. Cus believes in open gyms, believes boxing should be accessible, believes you never know where the next champion might come from. The 5 guys sit on a bench near the ring, watching Tyson work the heavy bag. He's wearing a t-shirt, shorts, hand wraps, and boxing gloves, standard training gear, moving around the bag with surprising speed for someone his size. Already 190 pounds of muscle at 17, throwing combinations. The bag swings violently with each impact. The sharp crack of leather on canvas echoes through the gym. One of the visitors, the biggest one, laughs, says loudly to his friends, "This is the kid everyone's talking about? Doesn't look that tough." His friends laugh. Tyson hears it, doesn't stop working, doesn't acknowledge them. Cus taught him to ignore distractions, to focus on the work. Nothing exists except the bag, the technique, the constant improvement. The big guy says louder, "Probably can't even fight without those gloves protecting his hands." More laughter. Tyson continues working, breathing controlled, punches sharp. The visitor stands up, walks closer to the ring, says directly toward Tyson, "You're nothing without gloves. Take them off and you're just another punk from Brooklyn." His friends are encouraging him, laughing, enjoying the confrontation. They came here for entertainment. This is entertainment. Tyson stops, lets the bag settle, turns and looks at the guy. Doesn't say anything, just looks. His expression is neutral, not angry, not offended, just watching, calculating, the way Cus taught him to assess opponents. Cus appears from his office. He's in his 70s, small, unimposing physically, but he carries authority. Everyone in the gym respects him, fears disappointing him. He walks over calmly, says to the visitor, "You have something to say?" The guy, suddenly less confident with Cus present, says, "Just making conversation. Saying the kid looks good with gloves on. Wonder how he'd do without them." Cus looks at Tyson, then back at the visitor. Says, "Mike, take off your gloves." Tyson starts unlacing his left glove. The visitor looks uncertain now, realizes this might not go the way he expected. His friends are still laughing, but more nervously. Tyson removes both gloves, sets them on the ring apron. His hands are wrapped in tape and gauze, standard hand wraps that protect the bones and knuckles during training. He starts unwrapping his hands, taking his time, methodical. The gym has gone quiet. Other fighters have stopped training, watching. The visitor is still trying to maintain his bravado. Says, "What, he needs his hands wrapped too? Can't fight with bare knuckles?" Tyson finishes unwrapping, drops the wraps next to his gloves. His hands are bare now. Scarred knuckles from years of training. Calloused, strong. He flexes them, loosens his fingers, looks at Cuss. Cuss says to the visitor, "You wanted to see what he can do without gloves. He's going to show you." The visitor hesitates, says, "I'm not fighting him. I was just talking." Cuss says, "No, you're not fighting him. You're going to hold the heavy bag. Mike is going to hit it. Without gloves, without wraps. You're going to feel what his punches are like. Then you can tell your friends if he's nothing without gloves." The visitor looks at his friends. They've stopped laughing. They realize this situation has turned. The visitor says, "I'm not holding any bag." Cuss says calmly, "Then leave. And don't come back. This is a gym for people who respect the sport, not for people who come to mock fighters who work harder in one day than you've worked in your entire life." The visitor's face flushes, embarrassed in front of his friends. Pride won't let him walk away. He says, "Fine, I'll hold the bag. Show me what this Brooklyn kid's got." He walks to the heavy bag, positions himself behind it, wraps his arms around it, bracing himself, trying to look confident. Tyson walks over slowly. No rush, no wasted energy. Stands in front of the bag. The visitor is directly behind it, only a few inches of leather and sand between them. Cuss says, "Mike, show him 3 punches. Left hook, right cross, left hook, full power." The gym is completely silent, maybe 20 people watching. Everyone understands what's about to happen. Tyson sets his stance, weight balanced, hands up. Even without gloves, his form is perfect. Textbook, years of training evident in every detail. He takes a breath, then explodes. Left hook. The bag doesn't swing, it jumps. The impact is so violent, so sudden, the entire heavy bag lifts off its chain slightly. The sound is different without gloves. Not the crack of leather, the thud of flesh and bone hitting with maximum force. The visitor's arms loosen. His grip on the bag weakens. His eyes go wide. Before he can recover, Tyson throws the right cross. Even more power. The bag crashes into the visitor's chest. Despite his size, despite his strength, despite bracing himself, he's driven backward. Stumbles, nearly falls. His hands let go of the bag instinctively, protecting himself. Tyson doesn't throw the third punch, doesn't need to, just steps back, shakes out his hands. No damage, no pain, just checking his knuckles out of habit. The visitor is standing there, breathing hard, face pale. He just felt a fraction of Mike Tyson's power, and it overwhelmed him completely. Cuss says quietly, "Still think he's nothing without gloves?" The visitor says nothing, just walks back to his friends. They're all quiet now, all the bravado gone. The big guy says to his group, "Let's go." They leave quickly. Don't look back. The gym stays silent for another moment. Then someone starts clapping. Another fighter, then another, then everyone. Applauding not because Tyson intimidated someone, but because he proved something. Proved that the tools don't make the fighter. The fighter makes the fighter. Cuss walks over to Tyson, says, "Go wrap your hands again. Don't ever hit a bag without protection unless I tell you to. You can break bones. You're a boxer, not a street fighter." Tyson nods, says, "Yes, Cuss." As he's rewrapping his hands, Cuss says, "You know what you just taught those guys?" Tyson says, "That I can hit hard?" Cuss says, "No, you taught them that talking is easy, that criticizing people who work is easy, that sitting on the sidelines and mocking fighters is easy. What's hard is getting in the ring, putting in the work, developing real skill, real power, real discipline. Those guys will never do that. They'll spend their lives talking about what they could have done. You're spending your life doing it." Tyson processes this, says, "They were disrespectful." Cuss says, "They were ignorant." There's a difference. Disrespect from someone who knows what they're talking about matters. Disrespect from someone ignorant doesn't matter at all. You don't need to prove anything to people like that. But today, I wanted them to learn something. Wanted them to feel what you're becoming, so they can tell their friends, so word spreads. So when you turn professional and start destroying opponents, People in this town will say they saw it coming. They felt it coming. Over the next 3 years, Tyson continues training with Cuss, developing into the most feared young fighter in boxing. In 1985, he turns professional. In 1986, at 20 years old, he becomes the youngest heavyweight champion in history, destroys Trevor Berbick in 2 rounds. The power that Visitor felt in 1983 is now being experienced by professional fighters on the world stage. They react the same way: overwhelmed, intimidated, defeated before the first punch. The story of the Visitor and the heavy bag becomes part of Catskill gym lore. People tell it to illustrate who Tyson was before the fame, before the money, before the championships, when he was just a kid with raw talent being forged into something legendary. In interviews years later, some of Tyson's training partners from that era talk about the incident. One says, "We all knew Mike was special. We felt his power every day in sparring. But watching him hit that bag with bare knuckles, watching that guy's face when he felt the impact, that was the moment we realized we were training with someone who was going to change boxing. The power wasn't just in his hands, it was in his core, in his legs, in his mind." Cuss built a perfect fighting machine. Another training partner says, "The thing about that day was, Mike didn't want to prove anything. He was happy ignoring those guys. Happy just working. It was Cuss who made him demonstrate. Cuss understood that sometimes you need to show people what's possible. Need to make them feel it. Not for your ego, for their education." Cus D'Amato died in 1985, just months before Tyson turned professional. Never got to see him become champion. Never got to see the fighter he built conquer the boxing world. But he knew. In those final months, he told people that Mike Tyson would be the youngest heavyweight champion in history, would be one of the greatest fighters ever, would prove that discipline and technique and proper training could overcome anything. The Visitor who laughed at Tyson that day probably doesn't remember it. Probably tells different versions of the story if he tells it at all. Probably doesn't mention that he left the gym humiliated and quiet. That's how it goes. The people who mock and criticize rarely remember their failures, but the people they mocked remember. Remember every doubt, every insult, every person who said they were nothing. Use it as fuel. Use it as motivation. Use it as proof that working in silence produces better results than talking loudly. "You're nothing without gloves." The Visitor laughed. Seconds later, after 2 punches into a heavy bag, dead silence. Not just in that moment, in the realization that he'd just felt the power of someone who would become legendary, someone who proved that greatness doesn't come from equipment or protection. It comes from thousands of hours of work, from dedication, from a trainer who believes in you and a fighter willing to do whatever it takes to prove that belief justified. Mike Tyson was 17 that day, already dangerous, already special, but still years away from championship gold. The Visitor learned what professional fighters would learn later, that Tyson's power was real, that his dedication was absolute, that mocking him was a mistake, that he was everything, with or without gloves.